There are several factors that contribute to making a story great. Things like the plot, setting, and character development all play essential roles in the making of a memorable tale. This is true even more so for manga and anime, where the representation of a character's development is visually tied to the power-ups the protagonists receive over the course of the series. For example, in Naruto, every time Naruto achieves a new form or acquires a new power, it's not just that he's getting stronger, it's a representation of his growth as a character, mapping out the trials and tribulations he's been through in the pursuit of his ideals and sense of self. This is an intrinsic motif of any shonen series, including Tite Kubo's Bleach. In this video, we're going to be discussing the anatomy of Ichigo Kurosaki, the main protagonist of Bleach. For those of you familiar with the series, you know this is going to be a spicy one, and for those of you who are new to this, well, strap in. In anime and manga, there are several characters and protagonists who are demi-humans, and their growth is tied to the various powers and abilities they gain as they discover or accept their true nature. We've seen half-demons, half-vampires, and werewolves. Tite Kubo took this concept and decided to just throw caution to the wind when he created Ichigo. Ichigo Kurosaki probably has one of the most varied anatomies of any shonen protagonist to date. He's the sum of many parts and embodies a little bit of every race and monster that exists in the Bleach universe. The man is part human, part Shinigami, part Quincy, part Hollow, and a Fullbringer, although the latter isn't technically a race. In this video, we're going to be discussing all of his various natures and his powers and abilities in details and how he came to embody them. The story of Bleach can be very well told by following the growth of Ichigo as a protagonist. Basic background. Before diving into the nitty-gritty of things, we thought we'd give you some basic information on our protagonist. Ichigo Kurosaki is a 15-year-old teenager at the beginning of the series and stands at a height of about 5'8". He comes from a family of 5, including his father and deceased mother, Isshin and Masaki Kurosaki, and his 2 younger sisters, Karin and Yuzu. He is athletically gifted and shown to be a quick learner, picking up new techniques very fast. Ichigo has always attracted trouble from delinquents due to his orange hair, which is its natural color. He has a headstrong attitude and a strong sense of justice, rushing into danger without any proper planning. Ichigo is the type of guy who will do anything to protect not only the people he loves, but also complete strangers who he feels are innocent and in need of his help, as we see during the course of the series. Later on in the series, when Ichigo is much older and probably in his 30s, he marries Orihime Inoue, his friend from high school, and has a son named Kazui Kurosaki. Why and how does Ichigo possess Shinigami powers? At the beginning of the show, we're introduced to Ichigo, a moody teen with a golden heart who can see ghosts and other creatures belonging to the spirit realm. Not long after the series starts, his home is attacked by a malevolent spirit known as a Hollow, which captures his sister and is about to devour her. Rushing recklessly to save his sister from the creature, he's almost killed when a Shinigami called Rukia puts her body on the line to save him, leading to her becoming gravely injured in the process. Now, with no one to stop the creature's rampage, Rukia acknowledges Ichigo's latent spiritual energy, or Reiatsu, and stabs him with her sword to transfer the remaining power she has in order to transform him into a substitute Shinigami. With his newfound powers, he easily destroys the Hollow and saves the day. This is the beginning of his journey as a Soul Reaper. To those of you confused about what a Shinigami is, they're essentially a take on the idea of a Grim Reaper, only these ones don't wear a hooded cowl and carry a scythe. The Shinigami in Bleach are tasked with ferrying the souls of the restless dead to the Soul Society, which is a plane of existence for souls. They're also responsible for the purification of hollows so that they can take their place in the afterlife, either in Soul Society or Hell. The Shinigami have their own organization and hierarchy and adhere to a strict code of conduct. We find out later that Ichigo owes his Shinigami powers to his father, who was actually an exiled Shinigami. Isshin Kurosaki was not just any ordinary Shinigami, but a member of the Shiba clan, one of the 5 noble houses of Soul Society. He was also once a captain of the Gote 13, the Shinigami organization. Towards the end of the first arc, when Rukia is taken captive by her brother-in-law, Byakuya, and her friend Renji, Ichigo is badly injured trying to save her and has his sword broken. He has his borrowed Shinigami powers destroyed by Byakuya, who leaves him for dead, claiming that even if Ichigo were to survive, he would never be a Shinigami again. What he doesn't take into account is the fact that, unbeknownst to everybody, Ichigo had his own true Shinigami powers which were inherited from his father. He is then taken by Kisuke Urahara to train as a true Shinigami and master his power. We find out that thanks to Rukia having lent her powers to Ichigo, his own latent Shinigami abilities have awakened. Under Urahara's rigorous training, Ichigo sets out to reawaken his Shinigami powers, and we find out how intrinsically a Soul Reaper and their Zanpakuto are connected. He is forced to enter his inner spiritual world where his Zanpakuto spirit, Old Man Zangetsu, tells him to find the source of his Shinigami powers, even as his inner world crumbles around him. As Ichigo concentrates and finally finds his powers, he emerges from his inner sanctum and completes Urahara's trial wearing a Shinigami's Shihakusho, but with a strange twist. He is adorned with a mask that's reminiscent of a hollow, which he cracks with the hilt of his sword. For the final task, Urahara tells him that in order for him to truly awaken as a Shinigami, Ichigo must knock his hat from his head within a limited time. As the duo clashes, Urahara reveals his Zanpakuto Shikai and begins destroying what little is left of Ichigo's sword. Renji explained to him that all Zanpakutos have a name, and only those who are in tune with their Zanpakuto's spirit and have command over them can release the full potential of their sword. He peeks out into his inner world once again and asks for Old Man Zangetsu's name, which is revealed to him. Ichigo screams out Zangetsu's name, finally transforming his sword into its Shikai form. The others gathered there express their curiosity about the strange shape of the sword and remark how his Zanpakuto had no guard or sheath. With his new sword, he manages to blow Urahara's hat off and complete his training. He emerges from this training as a Shinigami who has finally reawakened his own powers. What are Ichigo's Shinigami and Zanpakuto powers and abilities? Ichigo has inherited all the abilities of a Shinigami, including the use of techniques such as Shunpo and Bankai, which are exclusive to Shinigamis. One of the unique features that he has as a Shinigami is that his Zanpakuto is in a constantly released state of Shikai. This is the first stage of a Zanpakuto's transformation. In this form, he is granted access to his signature move called the Getsuga Tensho, where he concentrates his Reiatsu on his blade and fires it at an enemy. The beam takes the form of a crescent moon, which is where it gets his name, which roughly translates to Moonfang Heaven Piercer. Later on, he's seen being able to fire a much more powerful version of this called the Getsuga Jujisho. This is basically a move comprised of two Getsuga Tensho being fired in a cross pattern from the blades of his new twin-bladed Shikai form. His Bankai is called Tensa Zangetsu, and its appearance changes 3 times during the show. Initially, the blade turns into a single long black Zanpakuto and is used by him up until his final fight against Aizen. The second time is during the Fullbringer arc, when he completely masters his Fullbringer ability and is infused with the Reiatsu of the Shinigami of the Gotei 13 along with Rukia and Renji. This Bankai transforms his Zanpakuto into a long blade with slight perforations on it and a slightly curved tip. The third, and what is referred to as his true Bankai, turns his Shikai's new twin blades into a single large powerful sword with a chain attached to it. He achieves this form after having made peace with his various heritages and unlocking his true potential. When Tensa Zangetsu is released, he gains enhanced physical attributes, being able to attain speeds greater than even the most proficient users of Shunpao, Sonido, or Hirenkyaku movement techniques. His Getsuga Tensho is also enhanced, increasing its destructive power tremendously. Is Ichigo treated as an outsider by the Soul Society? It's interesting to note that throughout the series, Ichigo is never recognized as a full-fledged member of the Soul Society and a true Shinigami. There are a few things that cause him to be treated as an outsider by most denizens of Soul Society. Firstly, he's not a true Shinigami because he's not a pure breed, and he's inherited his powers only from his father's side. He's also not someone made of pure reishi, or spirit particles, like the rest of the Shinigami, and he possesses an actual human body. The last thing is, as a Shinigami, he doesn't belong to any of the Gotei 13 divisions like the rest. Hence, he's always referred to as a substitute Shinigami by some of the Soul Reapers, even though he's technically one of, if not the strongest, of their kind. Why does Ichigo have hollow powers despite being a Shinigami? A hollow is a human soul that has given in to despair due to not being able to find peace and pass into Soul Society. They are malevolent creatures who devour souls. Their physical appearance is altered upon transformation as they turn into grotesque shapes and have a mask form in front of their face, along with a gaping hole in their chest where their heart and the chain of fate normally is. The credit for Ichigo being a partial hollow can be given to Kisuke Urahara, the former exiled captain of the Gotei 13. During that training we mentioned earlier, he has Ichigo's chain of fate, the thing that connects his soul to his body, severed. This leaves Ichigo with only 2 possible choices, either to succeed and become a Shinigami, or to fail and turn into a hollow after his chain completely corrodes. As Ichigo barely makes it out of the trial as a Shinigami, he appears with a hollow mask on his face. Nothing much of it is made as Ichigo cracks attacks the mask with his hilt and proceeds. The audience is given the sense that Ichigo simply overcame his holification at the last minute, and his destroying the mask is symbolic of him destroying the vestiges of that process. Little did everyone know that this would be the beginning of his journey as a Visor, a kind of Shinigami that has Hollow Reiatsu within them, having undergone partial holification. There is another possibility, that Ichigo had already inherited some of the Hollow Reiatsu from his mother, as she had undergone an incomplete holification process herself. This is further backed by the theory that claims all Fullbringers contain a piece of Hollow Reiatsu within them as well. We'll discuss Fullbringers a bit later in the video. What are Ichigo's different hollow forms and abilities? Ichigo's hollow form is a major plot point for most of the Arrancar arc and the Hueco Mundo arc that follows. He uses it as his ace to battle against the various espadas. The espadas are Arrancars, hollows who have removed their masks, and are given a number by the villain Aizen, ranking them according to their strength. For the most part, Ichigo covers his face with a hollow mask for a limited time, which gives him a significant power boost. As the series progresses, the audience is introduced to various other facets of his power. The hollow mask is said to drain its user's Reiatsu rapidly in exchange for immense power. This is the reason given for why a Visor, who is not Ichigo, is unable to activate their Bankai and their mask at the same time. We get to see the true potential of this form when Ichigo is seemingly killed by the third Espada, Ulquiorra, when he is overwhelmed by the Espada's Secundo Resurrección. When Orihime's cry for help reaches his subconscious, he resurrects, resembling a Vasto Lorde, which is an evolved hollow with a hole in his chest. In this state, he's fueled by pure rage and displays characteristics that are akin to a mindless beast. He surprises Ulquiorra with his overwhelming power and the usage of techniques that are unique to a hollow. He's seen using Sonido, a high-speed movement technique that is somewhat similar to the Shinigami Shunpo and beam attacks called Zero. He is also able to regenerate all his organs that were destroyed by Ulquiorra. Ichigo has no recollection of his time in this form, and we don't get to see it ever again in the series. Much later in the series, we see him achieve what is known as a merged hollow form. He gains access to this form when he finally makes peace with his hollow and Quincy parts within him. In this form, he gains full control over his hollow abilities, being able to combine Getsuga Tensho along with a hollow's Gran Rey Zero Beam attack. His appearance slightly resembles the Vasto Lorde form he achieved in his fight against Ulquiorra, but he has no mask on his face and only one horn. In this form, he no longer needs to use his hollow mask to gain an increase in power. The hollow mask is said to drain its user's Reiatsu rapidly in exchange for immense power. This is the given reason for why a Visor, who is not Ichigo, is unable to activate their Bankai and their mask at the same time. The series is filled with Ichigo's interaction with his hollow self. They have a tenuous relationship, which is only resolved during the 1000-year Blood War arc, when Ichigo finally accepts the hollow as a part of himself, and in doing so, unlocks his true potential. How is Ichigo a Fullbringer? What does it mean? Ichigo is also a Fullbringer. These are spiritually aware human beings who have access to a plethora of unique abilities. They also all have one thing in common. Just like Ichigo, their mothers were all pregnant when they survived a hollow's attack. It's assumed that due to the attack, some of the hollow's Reiatsu is transferred into the unborn child, which results in their birth as Fullbringers. The Fullbringers are first introduced to us after the defeat of Aizen, when Ichigo loses his Shinigami powers due to him sacrificing them in order to use the final Getsuga Tensho ability. They claim to want to aid him in regaining his powers as a Shinigami and train him in their ways. It is, however, revealed that at the end, it was all a ruse for Kugo Ginjo, their leader, to steal Ichigo's powers to make them his own after developing them. Taite Kubo invokes the Japanese Shinto belief of all objects having a soul, as the Fullbringer's main power is their ability to manipulate these souls to achieve various effects. This includes manipulating the souls of things to achieve high-speed movements, increasing the effectiveness of their blows, and more. They also have the power to transfer the abilities to someone else. In the light novel Can't Fear Your Own World, it is also stated that all Fullbringers contain a part of Soul King within them. With Ichigo having mastered the power of the Fullbringer, he emerges with his new abilities merged with his Shinigami power at the end of the arc. Does Ichigo also have Quincy blood in him? A Quincy is a spiritually awakened human being who has unique special powers. They can draw reishi from the environment to power their various moves and spirit weapons. When a Quincy exercises a hollow, they don't purify it like the Shinigami, allowing the soul to take their place in the cyclic flow of souls. They destroy the souls of their victims, removing them completely from existence, thus disrupting the natural balance. It is revealed to us that Ichigo is not only part Shinigami, but also has Quincy blood in him through his mother's side. For the longest time, the audience had no idea that Ichigo's mother, Masaki Kurosaki, was in fact a Quincy. She had been taken in by the Ishidas, a pure-blooded Quincy family, in order to protect her as the last remaining Kurosaki and to marry their son, Ryukin Ishida, in order to maintain the purity of their bloodline. Masaki, however, had fallen in love with Isshin due to certain events linking their fate together. It was believed that she had fallen at the hands of the Hollow known as Grand Fisher. Now, while this was true, the full reasons behind the events that would shed light on her demise would be revealed later. For a mere Hollow to kill Masaki Kurosaki after she was revealed to be a pure-blood Quincy felt very wrong. No matter how powerful Grand Fisher was from the other Hollows, he was no menos grande. The real reason behind her demise was when Ichigo and Masaki encountered the Hollow all those years ago. She had been struck by Yuhavok's Oshvalin, a technique he uses to take back the powers of other Quincies to add to his own or redistribute it. Typically, a Quincy hit by this technique dies immediately, but Masaki was only rendered extremely weak, which Grand Fisher used to its advantage and slew her. What is the influence of his Quincy heritage on Ichigo? We find out that Ichigo's Quincy abilities have manifested themselves in the form of his Zanpakuto spirit, Zangetsu. Upon training with Uetsu Nimaya of the Zero Squad, he is told that his Zanpakuto spirit resembled Yuavok from 1,000 years ago and is possibly not his true Zanpakuto. Ichigo, upon hearing this, delves into his inner realm and confronts Zangetsu, who confirms Nimiya's statement. He tells Ichigo he had been suppressing Ichigo's true potential as a Shinigami in order to save him from harm. He also told Ichigo to recall how every time that his life had been in danger or he unlocked a new technique, it had been with the help of his hollow self. Zangetsu reveals that that's not really his name, and even though his initial intent was to stop Ichigo's growth as a Soul Reaper, he had experienced all the trials and tribulations of his growth, which led him to start supporting Ichigo. Upon revealing the truth, he fades away, forever releasing the block that was placed upon Ichigo's Shinigami powers. Ichigo is shown using the Quincy technique known as the Blut Vene, which fortifies a Quincy's body in his fight against Yuavok in their initial clash. It is he who informs Ichigo of his Quincy hat. We find out from Yuavok that Ichigo's latest Quincy abilities woke up during his clash against Kilgei Oppi. When Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho interacts with Kilgei's technique called the Jail, which traps anyone who isn't a Quincy, Ichigo absorbs some of Kilgei's Quincy Reiatsu. This results in him activating his dormant Quincy powers, which allows him to escape the jail. With Ichigo being a hybrid of so many different things, it's almost a meme. However, in the 1,000 Years Blood War arc, his Quincy heritage was actually confirmed. Guess the joke's on us. Marvelous verdict! Ichigo has always been treated as a special case by the people who knew of his mixed heritage, especially the villains. For Sosuke Aizen, Ichigo was a perfect candidate to measure his evolution as a transcendental being. Obsessed with being much more than a Shinigami, Ichigo was a fascinating subject to Aizen, as he had managed to achieve transcendence by simply being a hybrid. Aizen also probably needed someone at his level to push the Hogyoku to further his own evolution. As for Yuhavok, he mentions that he had intended to take Ichigo in and slowly awaken his powers to make him join his Stern Ritters due to his Quincy heritage. The Quincy forces had been warned to view Ichigo as a special threat. The fact that Ichigo managed to awaken his Quincy powers ahead of schedule wasn't foreseen by him. Unfortunately, it is widely speculated that the good guys of the series, the Shinigami, had the most sinister plan for Ichigo. Ichibei Ichimonji, the leader of the Zero Squad, is believed to have viewed Ichigo as the replacement for the Soul King since he embodies all the creatures of the three worlds. It's even said that Captain Commander Shunsui Kyoraku had signed off on the idea. Looking at the state that the Soul King is in, where he's dismembered and sealed in a state of stasis, this would have been the cruelest of fates for Ichigo. Ichigo is a perfect example of well-paced character development. He gains powers at a speed that's believable and under circumstances that add to the quality of the story. Despite having a protagonist of such incredible heritage, power, and potential, Tite Kubo manages to ground him and not just turn him into an overpowered god. He's the perfect balance of light and dark, and even though he's a pretty straightforward character on the surface, these various parts of him add a certain depth to his character. With the potential release of the Hell arc, we hope to see more of Ichigo and his growth. For now, we hope you enjoyed the video and that it helped you understand a bit of his powers, abilities, and heritage. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.